We are back for another State of the Franchise episode, and we had some updates come through per Kyle Shanahan just before we hopped on. So, what we're going to do is we are going to talk about a lot of the changes that are coming for the San Francisco 49ers, and of course, look ahead towards the Jags and what the San Francisco 49ers and who specifically needs to step up as the 49ers get ready to go on their second half run. But you guys already know what to do. Drop your spicy sourdough emojis in the chat, smash that like button, and let's talk some 49ers ball. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now. Jason Aponte, it's been a while. We fresh off the bye week. How are you feeling? Refreshed, ready to go? Talk some 49ers ball.
Absolutely. Went out, touched some grass, celebrated my birthday on the weekend on Sunday. That thank God the 49ers didn't play. Yeah,
Happy
so that was cool.
birthday.
Thank you. I mean, it's Wednesday, but yeah, it was
I was out in the wilderness with zero service. I had no clue.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Brad, you rarely check our group chat regardless. So, I mean, one could be true, but the other possibly could be true. But yeah, no, just took some time off, hanging with loved ones and stuff like that, not thinking about football and just kind of just locked in on my fantasy football teams and seeing how they're doing.
Oh, that reminds me. I have not looked at Underdog or State of the
Oh,
Franchise
we'll get to
league,
it.
so
I checked it out.
we're gonna have to pull that up. I have no idea how I'm doing. Probably still at the bottom of the league, but we'll figure it out there at the end and see who's rising to the top. And I guess speaking of rising to the top or coming down to the bottom, however you want to look at it, Steve Wilks goes from the top of the booth down to the field. That was one of the big updates today to come out of Kyle Shanahan's press conference as the 49ers begin preparation for the Jaguars. He talked about it heading into the bye that the 49ers were going to be looking for some changes and stuff like that. And the change that the 49ers are making, it's going to be Steve Wilks from the booth to the sideline. What's your initial reaction to it? What's your thoughts? And does this change anything for the 49ers defense?
Well, I mean, I guess if people are expecting Steve Wilks to turn into D'Amico Ryans and Robert Saleh in terms of emotion, I think that's misplaced. But the way that I was kind of rationalizing it was when you're in the booth, like guys are seeing things on the field and they have input and they're like, hey, coach, they're doing this, they're doing that. You really can't call up. I haven't seen anybody call up to the booth or see Wilks on the phone. So I guess having him on the field, and this is what Kyle Shanahan was talking about in the press conference was, if Fred Warner comes over and says, hey, coach, look, they're doing this and this, I kind of see this. This is my input. It'll never be too many cooks in the kitchen because you've got the players that are going through it and all those guys watch tape as well, too. So I think that the input would be welcome. And I think, again, this is going to be more of a collaborative effort between Kyle Shanahan and Steve Wilks. So I wouldn't be shocked if you see Kyle Shanahan and Steve Wilks conferring a lot more on the sideline during certain times in the game and him talking to him about, hey, this is what I'm seeing as well, because I figured that that's what this week would be. So, I mean, I think from a energy aspect, it's not going to be any different because that's just not the type of person that Steve Wilks is. But if you're talking about trying to shake things up and get input from everybody, I think that this is not a bad move. Will it solve everything? No, but you have to try things, right? The definition of insanity is just, trying the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So I don't feel strongly about it, but I can see why they're doing it.
Yeah, I had a very similar reaction and kind of thought process as well. It's like because when we heard from a lot of fans, as you know, we're in the chat, we see the chat all the time, and a lot of it's get Steve Wilks down to the field. And although I do agree 100% with what you had to say about the communication aspect, I think that is a big thing of being able to identify in real time looks, the way guys are playing certain techniques. Hey, coach, in this particular, when we're running press man, they're doing this type of release package on us. Maybe we can leverage that into something else and call something a little bit differently. I think that communication is helpful because, like you talked about, how you talk to Steve Wilks is you walk over to a phone, literally connected to a cord, and you pick it up and you talk to him. Kyle can't do that throughout a game in case he sees something. You can't have Fred, Charvarius, Talanoa, Bosa, all commute. Chris Surik, like, hey, I'm seeing this. Maybe we should change this look up. So I think with a new defensive coordinator, right, he's being fit into the 49ers kind of wide nine scheme. It's kind of a reverse engineering for a defensive coordinator. I do have sympathy for Steve Wilks in that regard. I think Steve gets a lot of hate as of right now for the defensive struggles, but it's also like, man, he's not even running his stuff. He's trying to fit basically into what the 49ers do. So I do sympathize with that. However, I do see that's where the communication might be able to benefit, right? Because just being able to talk like, hey, coach, I saw this. Like the face to face it's much easier to communicate certain things. But to your point as well, like Robert Saleh, D'Amico Ryans, every time a big play happened, camera pans over there. You got them flexing and doing all. I don't think Steve Wilks is like got one facial expression.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree. I don't think this solves a ton. I just think it's a change. It's a let's switch things up and see how it goes. But I do think communication, real time updates, checks, and different things like that could see a benefit moving forward. So, like, is the defense going to change overnight from this move? I don't think so. But what do you think?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that are outside of Wilks and his scheme, which I think you kind of labeled it perfectly. The way I label it is he was kind of shoehorned into this defense, right? Like it's just like, and when we look at him in comparison to Saleh and Ryans, a lot of people had criticism of Saleh and Ryans, but they did that under the understanding that they were first time play callers, right? I think when you bring in someone who's as seasoned as Steve Wilks, you expect this defense to just hit the ground running with no issues. But I think what I want to remind people is Steve Wilks didn't call plays in Carolina. Steve Wilks has called plays 2 times in his career as defensive coordinator. Every other time, he has not called plays. So it's because he has this long track record of being a coach that is kind of expected, hey, he's going to be able to get in there and look at these studs. You don't really got to do much. But we saw growing pains with Saleh and Ryans, but they were young guys. But there's growing pains right now with an older guy right now. And that's the part that is a little bit frustrating, I think, because everybody just expected Wilks to get in there. But scheme doesn't change missed tackles. Scheme doesn't change penalties. Those are still 2 things that has nothing to do with Steve Wilks. The 49ers, linebackers, and Hufanga, they miss tackles at an unreal rate. Avery, please. They miss tackles at an unreal rate right now. Happy birthday, old man. Thank you, bro. That's not scheme. That's not Steve Wilks. Right. Steve Wilks is not out there tackling. That is back to basics, fundamentals. That's not Steve Wilks. So when we talk about the defensive struggles, I do think you think what you said is absolutely true. All of it's thrown at the feet of Steve Wilks. But my goodness, man, like, can we start putting these guys, can we hold them accountable? Fred's playing phenomenal football. I just looked up his numbers. 15.4% missed tackle rate. It's unacceptable. I'm sorry, Fred. We love you, man. But you can't do that. We expect too much of you. Missed tackles, undisciplined play, penalties. I think Charvarius Ward has something like 7 penalties. All that stuff has nothing to do with Wilks. So this bye week is not only a reset for Steve Wilks to figure out why on the back end guys are running wide open and why they can't get home, which is kind of the chicken and the egg argument, right? Is it the pass rush that's holding out the secondary, or is the secondary stopping the pass rush? But we got to start talking about these players. Like, at what point do we look at the players and say, you're the one missing a tackle? That's not Steve Wilks. You're the one that's causing the penalty. That's not Steve Wilks. So the 49ers had a lot of soul searching to do this week. And a lot of that came from Steve Wilks trying to figure out how to put these guys in position to succeed. But I hope these players took a hard look at themselves as well too, because you guys are just a step short all the time. And that's what Kyle Shanahan was talking about. And I kind of did some digging on that. And the 49ers have the worst amount of rest schedule based on like how they play people, right? They play 4 people out of the bye. They have 4 games out of short weeks with a lot of travel. I believe the number is 26 days of rest. And that's when Kyle Shanahan was talking about when he said, when I popped on the tape, we look slow. A lot of that has to do with that. I know that's not an excuse because it's not an excuse. The schedule is what it is. The schedule is what it is. That's it. You go and you play and you have to overcome that. But we kind of overlooked that, right? Out of a short week, Jacksonville's coming off a bye. Cincinnati was off of a bye. Minnesota, Cincinnati had an extra day with Monday, right? The 49ers, and then the 49ers had to fly back, right? Like all of those things kind of get lost in the sauce. They have to do it again with Baltimore. On Christmas, they're gonna have a short week and then they're gonna have to get right back for Baltimore. Yeah, I mean, look, all of this stuff are things that, hey, look, it's not an excuse, but it should paint you a little bit of a picture of why, like, you're looking at this team and you're seeing them, like, why are they so sluggish right now? The travel, the time off, all of those things, it's true. And Kyle Shanahan was the one who talked about it as well. Not an excuse. You got to find a way to get around it because there's many teams that have had this happen before, but the 49ers schedule has been by far the worst. And I wrote about it on Niners Nation when it comes to that in terms of that.
Well, yeah, I remember when the schedule came out, the 49ers at the top of the league with the most miles traveled by, I think it was almost close to 30,000 miles that they're going to travel. But I think you hit the nail on the head regarding kind of the defensive conversation as a whole. Like Steve Wilks has been an easy target. And obviously, I've talked about it quite a bit on my channel. I've done a lot more emphasis on the defense, watching the film in years past, and so I'm starting to pick up on different tendencies and things like that. And I've had questions even when they were winning, like why are we running this type of coverage in this type of scenario, and all these different types of things. So the questions were there before they hit this 0-3 skid. But I think the most alarming thing in the 0-3 skid is how the defense is played as a whole, like on the field. And you talked about that. You talked about some of the missed tackles, kind of playing out of position sometimes, losing leverages. I think one of the biggest concerns for me has been the run defense. Like since that Browns game, I don't know if the Browns put something on film that other defensive or offensive coordinators have picked up on, but the Browns, man, they ran all over us, and they were getting to second level. They were getting hats on hats, and there was no double teams that were being effective. And ever since then, it's just like, man, you go back to the Minnesota game, the opening run damn near was a touchdown if Hargrave didn't chase it down. So the run defense is wild. I think you're muted.
Am I now?
You're good now.
Real quick about that Minnesota game, because I saw someone bring it up as part of the run defense thing, and they're like, Madison ran for 4.9 a clip. His first run was for 20 yards. And then the next seven were for 20. So those numbers are skewed. Don't give me the 4.9 yards when Madison ran off 20 on one and then had 7 that resulted in 20. So that one's just a little skewed. I think the Browns are a far better running team than that. But I saw someone bring it up and kind of throw it out there like they even let Minnesota run. Minnesota did not run all over the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know what game
they got Kirk Cousins to death, basically.
No, Kirk Cousins played well. I don't know what game anyone watched, but anyone who actually watched that Minnesota game, there's no way you could have sat there and said that Minnesota ran all over the 49ers. They had one run of 20 yards, and then Madison had 7 for 20 after that. That's horrific.
Oh, Justin dropping the dub on you.
My boy.
Happy late birthday, Jason. Grab a drink.
Shout out to him, man. Thank you, bro.
Hey, we got another one. Cynthia, keep sending the boy the birthday super chats.
Thank you,
Make
Cynthia.
sure you go over to his channel so he gets them directly. Happy late birthday, man. Hopefully the birthday present that we can really give you is a W against the Jags, because I think that would bring everyone's spirits up. It went from being on top of the world to doom and gloom. What is your take on that? The 49ers are 5-3. Obviously, we've analyzed all these losses just like we analyzed the wins. We have identified the problems. We're basically just rehashing them at this point. Are you doom and gloom, or are you these are the natural ebbs and flows of an NFL season?
No, I'm not doom and gloom right now, and I even wrote an article about why there's optimism for 49er fans coming out of the bye, right? Under Kyle Shanahan, this team has not been a team that's been out of the gates hitting on all cylinders. Even in 2019, when they were 7-0, the offense still largely wasn't clicking. Like, it still wasn't there. It only picked up down the stretch, right? The Saints game, they had to win in that way, and then in the playoffs, you do whatever you want with the running game. That's when the offense really clicked, right? So you look at the way that they made the playoffs the next time and the year after that, it was always down the stretch. It was always like guys getting back and rounding into shape. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. And I don't want to rely on history when it comes to being, exactly like, optimistic. But there is a track record with Kyle Shanahan where, like, the team starting out 5-0. I remember, Brad, we were on the show and I kept saying, something doesn't feel right. We're not used to this. We're not used to them just like coming out of the gate and just
Right.
being
Hot
like,
starts aren't something we're used to.
right. Like, and I'm just like, when's the dagger gonna come? When's the rug gonna be pulled out? Well, here it is. Like, right here it is, right? Like, and that's all based
Yeah.
on historical precedent. So that's one thing. The reinforcements thing. You have a trade for Chase Young. You get a bye week. All of these things are kind of going in your favor. Now, it looks like more and more that Trent's not going to play this week. Looks like more and more that he's not going to play this week. And that is a little concerning because he's had the 3 weeks and the bye. That's a little scary. But hey, if it has to be, it has to be, right? Like, I think Trent is so vital that you can't run him back out there. I think we all remember the NFC Championship game in which he said he kind of wished that Colton McKivitz played because he just couldn't do it. And he kind of blamed himself, right? Trent is so vital to this team that you let him wait. But I think what we saw was Debo's a little bit more important to this team as well, too, right? Like, you have to be able to have guys that take all the pressure off of other guys, right? Kittle and Ayuk have their days and everything. And I got things to say about Brock Purdy, too. And I don't think people are going to expect what I have to say about Brock Purdy, especially after watching and going back and looking at the numbers and watching the tape and everything. But it's right now, it's not doom and gloom. Right now, I hate to sound like this and I hate to be optimistic, but it's all right in front of you to fix. It is all right in front of you to fix. And the things that need to be fixed aren't these major things. Now, schematically, I'm not going to speak on that because I am not certain what needs to be done. I want to make sure I am clear on that.
Right.
I love looking at coverages. I understand sometimes when I see coverages, for the large part, I don't know what exactly is wrong with the coverages. I can point to sometimes alignment being off. Like, why is your slot guy so far away from the slot guy and now he's got to run yards to go get him while he's on motion? Like, that type of stuff is little stuff with alignment, right? But I don't know big schematics, right? Like, everyone's always like, well, just run press man or run this. Are you sure? Like, are you sure that's what it is? I think based on personnel, that's what you should run if that's what you think you have a better chance with. But the other stuff is fixable. Missed tackles, penalties, all that stuff is fixable. All that stuff is fixable.
Yeah.
Those little things are the things that are kind of killing this team and kind of putting drives and putting them in position to continue when it should be stopped. So there's where the optimism is with me, right? Like, it's there. Now, let's just say we go on the other side of it. Will these trends continue? All those things, it's very possible, but I just have a hard time believing. that a team this talented, this well coached, this battle tested, that knows what it takes to play deep in January has suddenly just forgot how to play football, regardless of the circumstances of how we brought it up. That's my thing.
Yeah, no, I all the points that you made are spot on. Like, honestly, like, it's easy to be doom and gloom, right? Because we are a week to week reactionary business. That's what the NFL is. Every week you have a new star and a new dunce. And then it switches and look at this comeback. And we've seen it, look at the Bengals, for example, and how they started their year. And they're like, oh, the Bengals have fallen off. And now it's like, oh, look at the Bengals now. They beat the 49ers. Who'd they play this last week? I know they beat someone pretty decent, right? Buffalo. They beat Buffalo. They beat the 49ers. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Now it's like, oh, they're back. That's why, like, I am never quick to rush to judgment unless I have a body of work. That's how football works in a nutshell. It's really easy to have a bad game. It's really easy to have a bad play, a bad sequence, a bad quarter. It happens to every single player in the NFL. And you also alluded to it. What's the trend, though? What is the trend of this season? First 5 games, the trend was through the roof, arrow pointing up. Last 3 games, trend pointing down. Should have won, I would say, 2 of those games. Bengals, obviously, that game got away from them at the end due to some turnovers and some other things. But what we now have to use this information is to basically discern what is actually happening here, because it's really easy to be reactionary one way or the other, and it's really easy to prey on the emotions of going 0-3. Oh, it's doom and gloom. Fire this guy, bench that guy, move this guy. But I think what the answer is, get back to the basics. It's super cliche, right? Get back to the fundamentals, get back to playing your assignments, and then let everything else fall in place. Going out and getting Chase Young, that's a big help. That is, in my opinion, a huge addition, because we were able to identify early on that they needed more edge help on the other side of Nick Bosa. Cleveland is good, not great. Drake Jackson has disappeared since, the first game, and just has really underwhelmed. And Randy Gregory is, kind of Randy Gregory is kind of what we expected to get from him.
Situational.
Has some upside, but what are we going to get from him week in and week out? TBD. You get Chase Young. Now you can be a little bit more creative with guys like Cleveland. Maybe use Cleveland like the Omenahue role, kick Cleveland over the guard in some situations. And you can get more creative with your rush packages. And hey, maybe that's going to help your back end. Maybe the things that we've talked about with Steve Wilks, being able to talk to Charvarius and Demo and Oliver and be like, listen, I'm getting cooked on this look. Let's run something else.
Yeah.
Let's do this next series. So I'm looking at it like this, at least from the defensive side, and then we'll transition to the offense, because plenty to talk about with Brock, plenty to talk about the offensive line. You kind of alluded to it already. But with the defense as a whole, the coverage, linebackers, defensive line, play calling, it's all been kind of underwhelming the last 3 weeks. Through the first 4 weeks, we saw glimpses, but the offense was putting so much pressure on other teams that it was putting the defense in favorable positions to get after the quarterback and do those types of things. So we've seen the flip script: offense playing from behind, defense having to hold their own. Now, against the Bengals, not bad. Wasn't the worst, but wasn't the best. A lot of missed opportunities. You think of the first drive, right? That first offense and defensive sequence against the Bengals feels like a microcosm of the last 3 weeks. 49ers going 3 and out after getting like an 8-yard run on the first carry. Punt, missed sack. 2 guys missed Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow escapes. Fred Warner almost takes his head off, and he completes a dot.
And he's
I
still
think it was Higgins.
Yeah. Higgins.
And then drives all the way down the field. I think there was some penalty, and then they score. And I was like, it's being in the stadium, I was like, damn, this feels like a microcosm of the last 3 weeks. Just this start right here. So we understand football is momentum. There's a lot of momentum in it. And it comes down to really small fine details that make the bigger plays. So basically, I'm just piggybacking on what you have to say. I'm in the same boat. I'm still optimistic that this team can get it back on track defensively, especially because although they have struggled early on this year, all I see is some tweaks. Needed edge help, check. Need to adjust some of their coverages potentially, get that going. And the defense could be right back on track. So any other last kind of thoughts on the defense before we transition kind of to the offensive side?
I think the level of worry, concern, panic, what have you, depending on the person that you are.
Sky's falling, Jason.
I'm sure there's someone that believes that as well. The thing is, if we went through 8 games, and I told you before the season started that given the 49ers opponents, right, and you were going to start in Pittsburgh and you were going to have, games on the road, that they were going to finish 5-3 through the stretch and go into the bye, I would bet there would be a lot of 49er fans that would have signed up for that. But
Hell yeah.
the fashion in which it's happened is what has caused most of the concern.
Right.
Let me explain. If the 49ers started 0-3, obviously people would have been tearing people apart, right? Like ripping each other apart, right? But
it would have been
then that
fire
means
Kyle Shanahan right off the bat.
right. But then that means you won 5 straight, right? Going into the bye. And that changes things. Now, if you spread these losses out, let's just say week 1 is one of those typical 49er games under Kyle Shanahan in which the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the San Francisco 49ers on the road. Let's say it's one of those rainy games that happens. You get that one. The other game that you lose is, to a fully healthy Rams team, right? Like Cooper Kupp and everybody's there and they all play. And, you almost lost that game right there without him.
Right.
But you beat the Cowboys, you beat the Browns, you beat this team. Like the outlook of 5-3 changes drastically if you space out the losses and you put them in different order. But the reason people are so disturbed is because after you look so dominant 5-0 and just like blowing people away, then you lose 3 straight is when the panic starts to set in. But those 5 games were a mirage for not only 49ers fans, but for NFL fans. That's not how the NFL is. Nobody's going to blow anybody out that way. I mean, I watched the Kansas City Chiefs loaf through some games, but they find a way to win, right? The Philadelphia Eagles find ways to win. Nobody's going to be blowing people out like that. That was the mirage. That was always the big thing. That was always the big thing in terms of like why the expectations have changed and why everything is looking so crazy to the 49ers now is because the 5 games were starting to be symbolic of what you thought the 49ers were going to do every single week. It's just not how the NFL is. It's not. Now, the optimism comes is that these games that you've lost have been largely self-inflicted. And they're things that you can fix, right? Like, it's not like you went into a place and you're just getting beat by an outright better team. Like, they're just out here doing whatever they want. There are things that you are doing that are allowing that to appear that way to someone who's not watching the game fully. But there's still things that you can fix yourself. So that's where the optimism comes in for me with this team. And I think that the fashion in which they got to 5-3 has elicited more panic than it would if it wasn't the other way around.
This is actually kind of funny. Gammon says, if the 49ers offense struggles to score 17 points again, should Wilks pull Shanahan into his office and ask Kyle to call plays in the booth?
Get in the booth, Kyle.
Back to the booth, Kai. We heard Kyle talk about it at the podium. He's like, man, it's pretty cool up there. Yep. It's nice up there. That's pretty funny. So obviously maybe that's a good transition kind of into the offensive side of the football, because I think we've been able to identify, and I'm not sure if exactly I know your thoughts on this or not, but it really does feel like the 49ers, a lot of the struggles have came from trench play, offensive line, defensive line, and then there's a trickle down effect as a result. So we 49ers inject Chase Young. I think that will make a difference. They have the guys. I think the edge issue will help a lot. And especially if Chase Young comes in motivated and ready to go, I think we'll get some juice from him. So I think that's a good fix for the defensive line moving forward. But you talked about it a couple minutes ago. Trent Williams does not practice today. Kyle did say he's hopeful that he will practice tomorrow, but things change all the time. But what that would mean, like let's say the 49ers are playing today, that means your starting left tackle and left guard are Jalen Moore and Jonathan Feliciano. Your 2 best offensive linemen would be out. And you've got Josh Allen, who's playing as one of the best rushers in the league right now. You got the former number 1 overall pick over there with the Jags. That's not a great spot to be in, is it?
No. Look, it doesn't matter who's on the other side. It's not good to be missing, your 2 best linemen regardless. It's not a good feeling. The Trent Williams thing, I think, again, I'm not as worried because watching Jalen Moore, I would have expected way less. And I feel like he's been fine. He's been fine. He's been fine. the problem hasn't been in pass pro with Jalen Moore. The problem is you can't run to the left side anymore. Like, you just can't. Like, you're not going to be able to do that. But I'm not going to put that on the young man because Trent, right? Like, it's Trent. Like, you're used to having that. It's never good when you have that. And then it puts more pressure on the other guys who are more seasoned. And when I say seasoned, you're looking at a 31-year-old center who is in his second year, essentially. And you're looking at a young man who's playing right guard in his second year, essentially. And then it's a right tackle who's going through his first year. I don't know why that just made me scared right now. Like, all of a sudden, why would you say something like that? Like, why would you put that in my head? I was feeling good. Like, I had all the good vibes.
You're like, I'm optimistic, man. I'm gonna keep this track. I'm gonna ignore the chat who's doom and gloom. We're going on the optimistic hype. And you're like thinking about it, you're like, damn.
And look, I think you're absolutely right. Trench plays one thing, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. What I deduce from this offense is they move the ball the same way that they were moving the ball before. But costly turnovers, stupid penalties, those are the things that are killing your drives that weren't killing your drives before. Right?
Yeah.
I wrote a whole article about Brock Purdy and about how essentially he's been playing like the same guy that he was last year. What's the one thing that's changed? Turnovers. And it's at the worst times. It's in the red zone or it's on the last drive. And those are the things that are happening to this team. So when I say it's correctable on defense with penalties and missed tackles, all this stuff is correctable, right? Like, it is all correctable, right? Guys dropping passes. Right now, Brock Purdy has as many drop passes on him as he did all of last year. He's already tied with 9. He's already tied.
Wow.
So it's all little things, right? And it just seems to be just like a matter of focus at 1 second, one moment. And those moments, which will happen when you stack all those, that's how you lose games in the NFL. The offense is still moving the ball. The one thing that's the most concerning is that they cannot run the football.
Yes.
They cannot run the football, and that is scary because so much of what this offense wants to do is based on, one, not only gaining yards and explosives through the ground, but also punching you in the mouth to the point that you want to submit. And that's not happening anymore, right? Like, I think it's more the running game is what it is to keep the offense on schedule and put you in good passing
play
situations.
Action alive.
Right. Well, and not in less than play action Brad. It's like when linebackers see a pulling guard, they automatically think that because of the run action, oh, I'm moving to this spot because that's where the run's coming. But little do you know that that's a window that's open now, and Brock's gonna bang that thing on Ayuk right there in that spot.
Yep.
That's what the running game does. That's the stuff that people just don't get about it, right? But the other part is submit to our will. We are going to beat the hell out of you. I held it back. I didn't say it. I know there's kids watching. We're gonna beat the hell out of you so you quit, right? We're going to beat the hell out of you until you quit. But you can't do that when you're running 2 yards, 1 yard, 2 yards, 1 yard. Like, it's just not the same thing, right? Like, and that's probably way more concerning than the trench play, which we can attribute to guys missing and inexperience on other sides. The penalties, which I think can be cleaned up. The drops, which need to be cleaned up. All of those things. The turnovers, which need to be cleaned up. But the running game, I feel, is especially concerning, in my opinion.
Yeah. And it's tough because I wish I could say, hey, it's this guy. This guy's the problem. And I don't look at it that way. After watching all the offensive line play this year, and even going back to last year, I also said this about the offensive line last year, but Christian McCaffrey just came in and he's so good that he really does a phenomenal job of masking a lot of things up front. I can't even say it's one guy on the offensive line. And it's the trend that I've noticed with the offensive line is it's one guy missing a block or missing a particular leverage or technique on one specific play. And it's not always the same guy. It could be Brendel. It could be Burford. It could be McKivitz. It could be Banks. It could be Trent. It could be Jalen. Like, And I think that's the biggest thing that's unfortunate about the 49ers offensive line, but it also paints a picture of optimism as well. Because if all five guys up front are executing, doing their job, and doing the technique as they should, the run game will have much more success. And you also have to put in Kyle Juszczyk, George Kittle, Charlie Warner, who are big parts of the blocking game as well in this offense. It just comes down to not all 11 executing at the same time. I wish I could point to being like, yes, Burford has struggled a little bit, but those growing pains are to be expected to a certain extent. Jake Brendel has made some mistakes, but I would say overall, Jake Brendel has played all right. Banks, same thing. And McKivitz, same thing. The key for them, to me, is being able to execute all at the same time. Like, that's really what it comes down to. And if they can do that, then I would imagine that the run game would kind of be revitalized. But you can't have one guy miss an assignment or give up penetration on a gap scheme run in the A gap and expect to find success, because you're going to mess up your pullers. You're going to mess up the angle of the run of the running back. And it's one guy. And so I'm going to say the O-line as a whole. I can't even pinpoint one specific guy. They've all shown signs of struggle, but they've all shown signs of being capable and competent. It's doing it together as a unit. And you know me, I'm a big O-line guy, and there's no other team within the team than like the offensive line, because all five have to play together. They've got to pass off stunts. They got to double. They got to be on the same page. And if they're not all executing, your run game is going to take a hit. And so it's a double-edged sword. It's concerning, but it's also correctable. And I think that might be the theme of the show: concerning, but correctable. And I think that's right now the definition of the 49ers as a whole. It's concerning if they don't correct it, but there are pathways to correct, right? Like, that's my look at it.
Yeah. And the thing is, the team that you saw the first 5 weeks didn't mean the 49ers were going to roll to the Super Bowl. In the same way that this team that you've seen the last 3 weeks doesn't mean that the 49ers are some sort of terrible team now all of a sudden. Right. The answer lies somewhere in the middle. It's somewhere in the middle. And I think what's a little bit more concerning is these games that are coming down to like one possession, and even still, right? Like, whenever you have these games where you're just like, hey, nothing's going right and everything, and you still have the ball with like a chance to win the game, or you still have a chance to make something happen to win the game, you kind of expect teams with championship medal to pull those games out, right? So again, like, it's the nature that this has happened that has people panicked, but it is correctable. And that 5-0 team that you saw, they're not walking through that door again. Like, that's not typical. That's not typical for teams to do that. 30 points a game, blow people out by 20, right? Like, we're laughing at the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. That's not typical. That's not normal what happens. There's a team right there on a hot streak. The same way that this team that you've seen the last 3 weeks is not this same team as well, too. And a lot of it is fixable. It's not excuses when people tell you why it's happening. It's context. It's a completely different thing. It's context, right? Those are the things that kind of have me still like, hey, I believe in this team. I still believe in what they can do. I still believe in their coaching. I still believe in their talent. The team that was here that we were boasting was the best roster in the NFL is still that best roster in the NFL. They didn't stop forgetting. They didn't forget how to like play football. They didn't just like have like in Space Jam. They didn't have the Monstars take their energy, right? Like, that's right. It's all the little things that pile up to a loss. And it's a turnover in the red zone, right, against Minnesota, which would have kind of changed the whole game. It's the play at the end of the half that would have like not gave them points. It's the drop in by Ayuk in the Browns game. It's the missed field goal. It's another missed field goal. Those little things, right? Little things, right? And then
things.
and then you go to the Bengals game, right? Brock Purdy looked like the best player on the field for much of that game, man. Much of that game, he looked incredible. And then you get a play where Pratt makes an unreal interception, flips the game right away, right? Because the way that game was going with the way the defensive performance was, it was gonna have to be back and forth. It was gonna have to be the offense going back and scoring and back and forth, right? Like you're gonna have games like that in the NFL. Your defense isn't gonna hold everyone down. Your offense has to pick up the slack. In the same way, when your offense is struggling, your defense picks up the slack. So I just, for me, everything has a reason. There's context. All of these things, they're not excuses, it's context. So I'm optimistic that this team can get it done, but they have to start now. They cannot mess around. They cannot lollygag in this Jacksonville game at all, right? Like they've got to go out and make a statement because the Jaguars are no cakewalk. Trevor is still one of those guys in this league, right? And even though their offense is kind of being carried by the defense, funny how that works. I think it was Lombardi that kind of put that out there. That was kind of funny, where it was like the number one kicker, the number one pick in the draft has the offense that's behind the guy who was the last pick in the draft. And the defense is carrying him and back and forth. It's all complimentary football, regardless, right? One game your defense is going to hold you down when your offense isn't working. Another game your offense has to pick up the slack for your defense. That's why it's a team game.
Yeah, and you hit it on the head, man. Like this team has the opportunity to flip the switch. Like I agree that the 5-0 thing, we were on a hot run at the beginning of the year. We don't know if that's the expectation for the team moving forward, but it comes down to complementary football. Like it comes back to this team being a unit, and that's what it doesn't feel like the last 3 weeks. They feel disjointed. They feel like they're making small mistakes at the worst times that turn into huge mistakes at the most glaring of times. And so you can correct all of that, and that's really, again, the theme of the episode: concerned but room for correction. And so that's where the optimism lies, right? Is that you can look at these things, you can fix missed tackles. Like you can go from throwing your shoulder at the turf to wrapping up, getting your head across the hips, driving through the tackle. You can change that you can fix that. You can remember, all right, I'm not in college anymore. I can't just be throwing my body around. I got to form tackle, take out the legs, pick up from the back of the knee, and drive these guys into the turf. Like, and then we got to swarm. We got to get back to 100% effort. Everyone's swarming to the ball on defense, offensively, executing. Do what you need to do. Make sure you get your blocks, execute your leverages and techniques, and do everything and catch the ball and make the proper reads. Hand off when you should hand it off. Don't throw it when you shouldn't throw it, etc., etc. Like you started to talk about Brock Purdy, so let's talk about Brock Purdy. Obviously, quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. I got a couple super chats. I'll get to you guys in a second. But let's talk about Brock because obviously the 49ers quarterback, shocking, is the most polarizing player on the team, arguably in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Well, we were riding high on the, I guess, Purdy high through 5-0 because he was playing phenomenal ball. Very limited mistakes. You saw glimpses where he could improve on certain things, and then he did improve on those things moving throughout the year. But then we have the Browns game. I chalk up the Browns game. He just couldn't grip it and rip it. Like, for whatever reason, heading into that, he couldn't throw it to the point where the ball literally flew out of his hands when he went back to pass, and he just couldn't get a grip on the ball. Still put them in a position to win. We know what happened there. You go to the Minnesota game. He was cooking all game. Yeah. Now, is it the concussion's fault? I don't know. All I know is on the last 6 passes of that game, he threw 2 interceptions. Then you get to the Bengals game, and I agree wholeheartedly. I was watching the tape, and I'm like, Brock's cooking. Not only is Brock cooking, he's using his legs.
And Burrow played an incredible game. Like, that's the thing. Exactly. It's like, I watched that game, and I'm like, damn, he was outplaying Burrow, and Burrow was hooping.
Exactly. And you're like, and you made that point. It's the first pick versus Mr. Irrelevant. And they were going back and forth. Brock wasn't outmatched, outgunned in that situation, even with some of the drops. And, you had 2 uncharacteristic drops from Kittle. You talked about the uncharacteristic drop from Ayuk that may have cost them 3 points. That could have changed some things in that game. But when I look at Brock, I look at him in Minnesota, how he rebounded from the Browns, and then I look at him against the Bengals. he's playing really well.
Yeah.
Now, where the discourse goes, I think, crazy is he threw 2 really bad interceptions at the end of that Bengals game. I mean, I look at that play
Back-to-back
like
passes, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
it was back-to-back, and he threw a 3rd interception that got called back due to
Called
a
back, yeah.
penalty.
And then he fumbled.
And then he fumbled. So it's a bad sequence there. But I look at that play where he threw it to Pratt. You talked about it was a great play by Pratt, but that was probably one of the worst plays I've seen from
It's a
Brock.
busted play.
It was a busted play, and it was busted on him because he didn't read it properly, and then he compounded the mistake with an even larger mistake. And so that's where the conversation about Brock Purdy becomes difficult, because on one hand, you have people who love the story. Mr. Irrelevant came out of nowhere, took the 49ers on an undefeated run into the NFC Championship. Then he wins 5 in a row, and the hype is the hype. MVP frontrunner potentially, all this stuff. And then you have the people also too, and I've talked about it plenty of times, like the second Brock Purdy has a struggle game or something like this where he makes a bad play in a bad time, people are going to come after him. And that's what we're seeing. So now it's like a divide. Like we have people on one hand who've seen the success he's had on a pretty decent scale, still not a huge scale, and we still need to see more. But then you also start to see the glimpses. This guy's human. And he's made some mistakes in crucial moments, and at least in back-to-back games. So who is Brock? What is Brock? Is he a pumpkin, or is he a guy that could be potentially considered at, maybe not right now. I think he was playing as a top 10 quarterback through the first 5 weeks, but could he be a fringe top 10 guy? Who is Brock? Who is he? Who's he in your eyes?
Brad, every quarterback outside of the elite guys are a fringe top 10 quarterback. And I want to explain that to you. What I mean is, in 1 week, you can have one guy at 8, and then 1 week when he plays poorly, you can have him at 15.
Just drop him back down. Oh, he's back to 19. Get him out.
I love how everybody's just like, I want an elite guy. Well, they're not growing on trees because there's like 4 of them. And then everybody else,
even some of the elite guys are having struggles right now.
Right. So it's like, everybody else is kind of the same guy week to week. Yeah, thanks, Averly. Everybody is kind of the same guy from week to week, right? Dak Prescott could put up 3 straight weeks where everybody's like, he's a top 10 guy. Dak Prescott can go the next 3 weeks. They're like, I don't even understand how he's top 15. Kirk Cousins, when he was playing, could be a guy that's literally like, man, he's top 10. Oh, well, you know what? I don't even think he's top 20. Like, all these guys shuffle every single week. So I don't think the idea of him having to be a top 10 guy is something that, like, I just hate that label, because nobody can ever really put a proper way to determine it when every guy is competing to be a top 10 guy, basically, outside of the elite guys. Every single
feels
one
like
of them.
You need like a couple years of body of work to be able to be that solid up, not to be one of those guys, like you said, that are just jumping and falling based on
100%.
week-to-week play.
100%.
They actually have to put together years of a resume for us to be like, all right, through the ups and the downs, we see he's top 10.
100%. Like, there's like 5 guys that you know are like the elite guys, and I don't know, man, that number like dwindles sometimes, especially during weeks. I think Lamar's elite. I think Patrick Mahomes is elite. I think Josh Allen at times, you know, I'll put him right there now, can be elite, right? Like that's the thing, right? Like even
this year.
Right, like even me saying like I think Josh Allen, right? Like that should go to show you like this whole like elite guy. There's like 3 of them. Like that are like elite every single year.
A little bit, like,
yeah,
we want the next Patrick Mahomes.
I want the next Mahomes. Where he at? All right,
like, chill.
But I did some digging on Brock Purdy, and right now Brock Purdy's sample size is pretty close to what he put up last year. The only thing that's changed is that he's had 63 more dropbacks this year.
Okay.
So I mean that's fairly close, right? I would say that's a pretty even data point, right? Right, Brad?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So the differences from last year, his touchdown percentage has dipped from 7.6% to 5.4%, which is going to happen when you have more dropbacks, right? I think that is pretty clear. But the interception rate has decreased from 2.4% to 2.2%. Purdy's on-target percentage has increased from 72.2% to 73.4%, and his catchable percentage has dipped from 88.3 to 86%. Okay? those numbers are likely to dip because of increased passing attempts, right? Like that makes sense, okay?
Yeah, larger
But
sample
here's something
size.
that's a little bit more interesting. This year, right now, Purdy, in 2022, Purdy finished with 662 completed air yards, which were 48.2% of his intended air yards of 1,105, meaning he could have had 1,105 on every single pass with all the air yards. He completed 662, which is 48.2, little less than 50%. This season, Purdy has 1,069, which is a nice number, completed air yards for 52.6% of his air yards of 1,680. And his average throw depth has increased from 6.5 to 7.5%. Now, the one thing that's changed, obviously, is the turnovers. So let's look at the raw data numbers, right? The raw data. 67.1% completion percentage last year, 68.3% this year. 2,000 passing yards already, 1,374 last year, 8.1 per attempt, 9.1 per attempt this year, 196.3 per game, 254 per game. Obviously, there's been times where the 49ers have been down, they've been throwing the football, but 13 touchdowns last year, 12, 4 interceptions last year, 5. The biggest thing that changes is the fumbles. Is he has, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 4 to 5 fumbles, but he's lost 2. The fumbles.
Bengals and what was the other one?
I think it was Minnesota. If I'm not, well, no, not Minnesota. But
He
what
didn't lose
PFF?
the one against the Browns, did he? He was able to recover that one.
I'm not sure. I know he recovered the one against Pittsburgh. The fumbles is what's kind of increased a little bit more. So this is what PFF has to say with their advanced statistics, right? PFF's, Purdy's BTT, big time throws, the number, amount, and percentage have increased. He had 5 big time throws last year. He's got 14 this year. That's a percent that rose from 2 to 5.8%, right? In 1 year to the next. But unfortunately, Purdy's turnover worthy plays have doubled in number and percentage from 7 to 14 and 2.5% to 5.1. Last year's drop number is still tied with 9, right? And Purdy's time to throw has dropped from 2.84 seconds to 2.55 seconds. And Purdy has already tied how many times he got sacked last year, right? Basically, he got sacked 14 times after he got sacked 15 times last year. But Purdy's P2S percent, which is pressure to sack, has dipped from 17.2% to 14.4%. And what I mean by pressure to sack is per pressure, how many times did it turn into a sack? It's actually dipped. So he's actually gotten the ball out when he needed to. But why am I bringing all this up? It's just for large stretches of these games, Brock Purdy is not only good, at times he's great. But then it's those critical moments with the turnovers, the fumbles. Though those things have kind of clouded and changed the way we perceive his season so far. And compound that with the fact that the team is losing, right?
Yeah.
Because Jimmy was the king of, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and the Niners win. And Jimmy's a winner. He's a winner. Look at how good he is. He's a winner. Those are the things that, like, I just wanted to point out. That's objective statistics, right? Remember, Brad and I are on the side of stats need to line up with the film. And I feel like it does. I feel like for stretches, all of those numbers that were glowing, you're like, man, look at him. He's improving. And then when it's those plays that are awful, you're like, oh, we forget that's a guy that's starting his 13th game, right? Like, it's still a guy that will still make those. So again, we have to contextualize all of those things with everything. But I think his stats bear out what his season has been like. At times, been great. At times, showing you all those things. But at critical moments, unfortunately, and I mean critical, like not only like the last drive of the game, like in the red zone. In the red zone, or like,
can't
like
have turnovers
those things.
in the red zone.
It doesn't always have to be the last minute for it to be critical, right? Like when you're in the red zone, you got to score. When you get nothing in the red zone, that's horrible. That is kind of where I'm at. Like everything kind of lines up, and I can't believe that I'm saying this, but the stats like line up with the numbers. And again, you can still sit there and say, hey, I've seen improvement. I've seen a guy who can still make all the throws. I've seen that dude. But then you can say, hey, he's taking a step back. Those turnover-worthy plays are turning into turnovers, and they're doubling now. Now, is that because of game script? All of those things, I think anybody who watches the game knows. But I was so intrigued when I went through the stats because I feel like that kind of bears out what, when you look at someone's stats, it doesn't tell you really how their season's been going. I mean, Dre Jackson had 3 sacks in the first game. He wasn't dominating. Like, it wasn't like he was just a menace. Like, he was running into sacks.
It wasn't a J.J. Watt 3-sack game.
No. Right now, this is a little bit of like, man, this actually can tell you a little bit about how he's going.
I mean, that's a ton of great information. Like, you guys know I'm strictly film just because numbers and words, they don't compute with my brain all that well. So that's why everything I do is pretty much visual. But listening to you talk about it, you did a really good job of kind of painting the picture. And to the point is, it's like, we've watched all the tape. I've watched every snap that Brock has taken with the 49ers, studied every single throw. And I was looking at these last 2 games against Minnesota and against the Bengals with a critical eye, because I wanted to determine what really was that Browns game for Brock, because that was the game where I'm like, man, he was just missing throws, sailing, inaccurate. I was like, this is an anomaly, especially after starting out 5-0, or effectively up until that point hadn't lost a regular season game, which is also an anomaly, right? Like, that just doesn't happen for young quarterbacks. And then watching closely, body of work again, right? That's part of it. In a body of work, Brock is still playing, like you said, good and at times great, making insane throws. He leads the league in yards per attempt. We had the whole great debate, is he a dink and dunk quarterback? And here we are, according to these stats, he's throwing it further than any other quarterback in the league per passing attempt. And the thing is, it's like, Brock, to me, is proving and continues to prove that he is not only capable, but he can continue to elevate this offense and continue to put this offense in positions to be successful. But that also means he has the opportunities to do the opposite as well. So 2 things can be true. Brock Purdy is playing really well this season. He's continuing to build on what he did last season. I see times where he's throwing 20 to 25, 30 yards downfield outside the numbers, on zip, with layered over defenders. Like, he's making some really high-end throws at times.
And Brad, if you looked at a box score and you see 11-yard completion to Kittle, you'd be like, oh, that's a modest play. But when you watch the throw on film, it's a layered throw over a linebacker and in between a safety. Yeah. And that's why box score watching can get you in trouble, right? Like, those sort of things. But I don't want to throw those turnovers out, because that is an important part of the conversation.
Huge important part.
Yeah. Okay. Keep going. I'm sorry.
And so basically, it's like, all right, what's the middle ground? Because I think the main point of what we started to talk about with what and who is Brock Purdy, right? Because it's like, we set the stage. You have 2 polarizing thoughts. He's a bust. He was an MVP front runner at one point, right? It's like, who is he? It's definitely somewhere in between, but I think it's way closer to kind of the front runner than being a bust. I think he's continuing to prove that he is capable of operating this offense at extremely high level, making every single throw. Like, I watched Brock Purdy, and especially after watching Jimmy Garoppolo on prime time in his last game with the Raiders, and being reminded, like, because I've watched so much Jimmy Garoppolo film, and then being reminded and going into Brock's film, I was like, oh my gosh, like, what a breath of fresh air it is to watch and study Brock opposed to Jimmy Garoppolo, just because you don't know what you have until you don't have it, or you got something new. Right. And the thing is Brock is playing really well. But like you said, we can't have critical turnovers in critical moments at the end of games. Nope. And that goes with any player. That goes with anyone. Like, you can't turn over the football. That's one of the number one keys, I think, of any football team.
Mm-hmm.
Don't turn the ball over. If we win the turnover battle, there's a good chance we're going to win the game, right?
And critical moments don't have to always be the fourth quarter. Critical moments are in the red zone.
Absolutely.
In the red zone, right? Like, that's why the Minnesota game is so strange. Christian McCaffrey fumbles in the red zone. Yeah. Like, on a play that, like, I don't want to be like one of those guys that's like, if this happens, if that happens, but you get an interception on the first drive. Christian McCaffrey punches that thing in. You score 7-0, and now
the entire complexion.
Right. And now Kirk Cousins all of a sudden has to, like, really, really feel like he needs to throw the football, and it changes the way you go about it.
Football. Oh, it's
right.
The thing.
Right. So look, that's my thing. Is more than anything is critical moments don't always have to be the last drive in the game, right? I mean, obviously, a critical moment is the last drive in the game, probably the most critical. But it's like the little stuff, man. Like, what am I supposed to surmise from Brock Purdy when the offense goes down the field, and puts their field goal guy in range, and he misses in Minnesota, and he misses in Cleveland twice? What am I supposed to say? Brock Purdy didn't do his job? Am I supposed to say the offense is broken? Like, those are the results sometimes. And again, it's just those little things. It's just the little stuff. Like, I don't want to say every field goal is automatic. But damn, man, you're a third-round kicker. You got to work. You have to work. Like, it's not like, oh, this is an experiment. You have to work. You passed on Blake Freeland has started every single game for the Indianapolis Colts. DeJuan Jones cooked as a Cleveland Brown against the 49ers. Cooked.
He did so good.
And while 49er fans sit there and they're like, damn, I'm worried about the right side of the line. How many of you guys were making fun of me when I was so mad at the idea of taking a kicker with a top 100 pick, man? My God, man. I mean, draft football. If you miss on a lineman, I will say, hey, you missed on a lineman.
If you missed on a lineman in that third round, you
took a shot on a football player, though.
An eye. Not even.
You took a shot on a football player. If you draft a kicker with a top 100 pick, he cannot miss any kicks. He can never miss, and he needs to work. This is not an experiment. This is not you picking up the guy from the replacements. This is not an experiment. Stop taking kickers and punters in the third and fourth rounds and invest in the O-line and back end. Imagine using your top 100 pick on actual football players. I'm tired of banging the table, and I'm so sad that it took so many people to finally figure this out. You should have been outraged the moment that card read Jake Moody, kicker from Michigan. Franchise kicker, my ass. Nick Folk from the Tennessee Titans. Nick Folk from the Tennessee Titans has not missed one kick at all. Not a field goal, not a PAT, nothing. And you want to spend a top 100 pick on a kicker. Insane. And this is not to do anything with Jake Moody, because it's not the person. It's the pick. Positional value. Blake Freeland.
Right?
Freeland, right tackle. DeJuan Jones, right tackle. My God. For a team that is so good at roster building, sometimes they get lost in the weeds. I guess they really love Colton McKivitz, man. That's just scary to me to think that like, you can overlook that and just say, hey, yeah, man, we're straight. Let's just take a kicker and troll everybody. You know who else takes kickers? His name is Bill Belichick. You know who Bill Belichick's best receiver is right now? Brad Graham's favorite receiver in the world, Demario Douglas, who nailed it. But maybe if Bill Belichick didn't take kickers and punters in the third and fourth round and actually put weapons around that team, my God.
Put some respect on Juju, all right?
Juju. Good God. Oh, man. Look, again, that offense is in a bad way and they need weapons, and this man is out here just taking kickers, man. It's so bad. I mean, look, again, like, Colton hasn't been bad. I will say that. Colton hasn't been bad, but Blake Freeland could have been your right tackle of the future for no money, right? Like, for a few years, right? Like, it's just, again, I don't hate. It's like everybody tells you the draft is a crapshoot, and it is, right? Because what is it? Less than 50% of first rounders end up being somebody, and then that number plummets every single round. But you have to take chances on actual football players, man. Like taking a kicker is insane, man. It's insane behavior, especially when you look at the way your offensive line didn't have depth. If God forbid you felt Cole McKivitz wasn't the plan, you can pivot to Blake Freeland. You could pivot to DeJuan Jones, man. That's exactly what Cleveland did. DeJuan Jones didn't start at all. He started his first game against the 49ers, which made it. I was looking at the screen like turning red. Like turning red. I was just like, how dare they actually
He
draft a
dominated.
lineman? Yeah,
He
but how dare they
dominated us.
they turned to a lineman after their right tackle was out and he played well. And I'm just like, the 49ers have no option like that.
Yeah.
All right, I'm done. I got it out. That's why I didn't do State of the Franchise after the Cleveland game.
You're like, I can't even do it.
I can't. I don't want to turn it into all this. I can't.
Yeah, no, it's been rough. Like, right, because like obviously since the pick, a lot of us just trying to rationalize it, trying to be like, oh, we're gonna get a guy that's going to be hopefully someone we can rely on. But part of the problem is we can't necessarily rely on him just yet. And so right now, it's already reared its head in a crucial moments in crucial games that have led to the 49ers losing. Like that's big. And that's hard for a rookie too, because
it's
they're
not
so
his fault.
fragile. They're so fragile.
He didn't draft himself. He
Right.
didn't draft himself.
Right. He didn't draft himself. He got put into that situation, and it's a lot of pressure. It's the same thing when I said the day they drafted him, I'm like, this is like taking a quarterback in the top 5. It's the same pressure because you don't take kickers in the 3rd round. Like
No.
Dicker the kicker, undrafted free agent. I think the dude's making everything right now.
Well, the Dallas Cowboys undrafted free agent hasn't missed a kick at all.
Right.
And look, all right. So here's the difference. You can grab an undrafted kicker, right? And when he doesn't work, you can call Robbie Gould. You can call. Look, what did the Giants just do? Right? Graham Gano was on IR. They called Cade York. They called what's his name? Bullock. They called all these guys who have kicked footballs in the league that are sitting in the crib. These guys aren't like Rocky, right? Like they don't have to run up the mountain to train to fight Drago. They're not football players. They're in shape all the time because all they do is kick footballs, and they're in the crib waiting to be called. This is the process that you should go through when you are thinking about proper roster building. Now, again, look, the 49ers have done a phenomenal job, especially grabbing guys in the 5th and 6th round. So I can't like completely, talk crazy about them. But my God, when you have 3 picks in the 3rd round, you've got Jair Brown, who you haven't used. You drafted a kicker with top 100, and then Cam Latu. That 3rd round has been awful. And to further my point, and I'm glad that Keith brought this up, Kymie Fairbairn got hurt for the Texans last week. I don't know if you guys saw the kicker. He got hurt. Do you know who kicked a 30-yard field goal and made it straight down the middle for the Texans?
Who?
Dare Agumbawali, their 3rd string running back.
No way.
You gotta be killing me. Like what? Like literally, I'm looking at the screen. Like, you see what I'm talking about? Like, do you see what I'm talking about? You don't pay for kickers. You go to Trader Joe's, you go to Walmart, you ask them if they've ever kicked a football, and then you bring them on and you let them kick. When a backup running back, he made a 30-yard kick. I'm just like, bro, what is this value on his position? And Robbie goes somewhere smiling right now. Oh, I'm sorry. That's it. No more kicker talk. I don't want to talk about it. Pissing me off.
You were waiting to get that off.
I let that one out because I've been holding it back.
It's time. Yeah, it's time. No, and it's cost us games, and that's the frustrating part. And we knew that Moody was going to be put in those situations, and the other side of it is we have no other choice. They're not going to cut.
He
Moody.
has to win.
He's going to be the kicker the rest of the year. He has to win. Based on any just utter collapse, right? Which could happen, but by what they've invested into him, the 3rd rounder and all that type of stuff, they got to let him go.
Mr. Black Ice said he kicked the touchback as well too. He did off of the kickoff, off the tee.
Oh, the running back did.
Dare Agumbawali.
Sign that man to a 10-year contract.
Woo!
So Blake Freeland, man. I
Blake
know he
Freeland,
got
he's
cooked by what's
that's
his
all right.
name
But
on
he's
that
played
one
every game.
play. Yeah, and he's played okay. Which is for a third, fourth round
Yes.
offensive tackle. That's
And he's
pretty
pressed into
good
duty.
return.
That's the thing, is it
Yeah,
was about depth, and that's the thing.
right.
It's good.
Yeah. So one more position that I think we haven't talked about yet, and I was trying to wait for a nice
Mhm.
transition. Justin says, uh, is any time going to be Jordan Mason time? Feel like every time I see Elijah Mitchell lately, it's a tackle for loss. No disrespect to Elijah, but he doesn't look like himself. Doesn't he have like negative yards rushing since returning? I think he like legitimately has a negative in the stat book. I don't know. I
Yeah,
think I heard
he
that
has no
somewhere.
juice, man. I don't know. I don't know. I've been kind of going back and forth with him, and the same kind of thing with like Michael Gallup, who like he tore his ACL and his juice is zapped. Like he has no burst. I think one of the better things about Elijah was he was able to get what was blocked up. But
Yeah.
I don't know, man. He just doesn't look right. You have a whole offseason where you have no real injury, and then you get hurt in practice, and then you're hurt like almost every week. I don't know, man. I don't know. Um, is it a little bit of the line? Is it a little bit of him? Sure, I would say that. But I don't know, man. Why is it that other guys, because Mason runs behind that same line, Mason runs out behind the same line as Mitchell, and he's getting 4 and 5, right? It's hard to explain with Mitchell, man. I don't know. I don't really know what's going on with him, man, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen it, developing over the last 2 seasons that Jordan Mason just is a violent runner. He runs
Yeah.
so well, and has such good vision.
He's just trying to
There
get
there's
downhill.
Yeah, there's so many good aspects of his game, and he's able to find the creases, and he's able to fight through for tough yards. And we haven't even seen enough carries from Elijah, I would say, to even give a true evaluation of who or what he is this season. Like, we really just haven't seen Elijah, and when we have, it just hasn't really turned into much. I mean, he would have had a touchdown if Brock would have gave him the ball on that read. To be fair, I think he would have walked in for a touchdown, but Brock pulled it, and then I do know. I think was it this game? I think it was this game on the Christian McCaffrey touchdown. Elijah had a phenomenal block to spring CMC, but when it comes to just running, it feels like Jordan Mason for sure uh, has a little bit more juice right now, but I don't know. We're just not seeing him. I don't know if that's a trust issue with some of the fumbling issues from training camp and preseason or what have you. But we live in a Christian McCaffrey world, and it doesn't appear that's going to be changing anytime soon. Even with the injury concern that Christian had a couple weeks ago, we're like, all right, maybe this is going to open up the door for JP. And it's like, nope, it's CMC and CMC only, pretty much.
I think it's that trust circle that Kyle has, right? I know when Christian's in there, he's gonna pass pro. I think we're all forgetting too that when McCaffrey's in there, the gravity that is given to
It's
him, that
huge.
opens up things for other people. It's a trust thing though as well too, right? Like it's very much a trust thing, and we've seen that. It's like almost irrational trust to a fault with certain players, right? Like certain players can get away with whatever. And obviously, I'm not talking about Christian McCaffrey; he's incredible. But it's just like when you're in the trust circle,
Yeah.
when you're in the trust tree, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, you can't do no wrong, right? Like, and I'm not talking about Christian McCaffrey in particular. I'm just talking about overall with Kyle's philosophy. But he doesn't trust any of these other guys, any of them. TDP can't get on the field. That's another third round miss. Um, with Mason, I think what they end
Danny
up,
Gray, where's Danny at?
Danny's,
They're
injured.
like they're like we can't even bring you up off IR at the moment because we don't know who to let go.
And the thing is like with Mason, I think they value what he does on special teams so much. And
Yeah,
it's like,
huge.
man, like he's great on special teams. I think a lot of people forget that as well too. Like even though the special teams
He's
on a
just a
whole,
great
like
player. Like he really
right,
is.
like
He's just a good
he
player.
does whatever he needs, right? But
Yeah.
this is a Kyle thing. This is Kyle like in his head with trusting, right? Like in a pass pro situation, can I have him in there? Do I trust him to not fumble the football, right? If McCaffrey fumbles the football, it's okay. He's scored 17 straight games and he's literally done things that have like lifted the offense, right? Like it's a little bit of back and forth with that. So I think it's hard to explain. I think a lot of us don't get it. But I think if we're gonna pick something to point to, it'd probably be Kyle and his trust.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things progress. I think, my biggest concern with the running back rotation is like we do use Christian McCaffrey a lot, and rightfully so. I don't expect it to be any different. I expect him to be a high usage running back and get a lot of carries. And like you said, when he's on the field, the defense is alerted to him. Even if he's just running out of the backfield, he's pulling linebackers out of the middle of the field and all that different types of stuff. And that aids the offense as a whole. But again, it's also like I don't want to, knock on wood, find ourselves in a situation where you unexpectedly have to rely on Elijah or Jordan, and they don't have the reps under their belt. They don't have that kind of wear and tear of, all right, those jitters are out of me getting into the game. When I get in, it is what it is. We're ready to cook. They play so sparingly that it's like you don't know what you're going to get. We don't know what we're going to get with Elijah. He's had like 6 carries in the last couple games. Like that's not enough for anyone to get into any type of rhythm from a running standpoint. And so long story short is it's CMC. So I understand it from that aspect. I like Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason seems like he's got a ton of juice. It looked like he had a ton of juice when he was coming in earlier in the year. I know Elijah Mitchell has had success in this offense before, so it's probably a combination of different things. But it will be fast. If I was a betting man, and if I had to say, I'm going to bet $100 that Kyle Shanahan is going to play CMC 90% of the snaps or more, I'm taking the over 100 out of 100 times. Like, I just don't see him letting off the gas at all with CMC. Do you?
No, especially in a game that we're talking about on Sunday that they need to win. And it seems like everything needs to be a win right now at this point, right? Like you have to beat Jacksonville and Tampa Bay. Like you have to end up with those games being 7-3 right now to have any semblance of like what you think you can get. Philly has a brutal stretch coming up of like, so it's Dallas, Buffalo, Kansas City, Seattle, Dallas again. So there's got to be losses in there, right? Like they can't win all of them, right? So if there's ever a chance, right, the 49ers have to start now, and they have to start before they get into their stretch. I wanted to kind of point something else too about the rest schedule and everything. Like I just wanted to give a little bit more context to it. So the 49ers have faced 3 teams off of the bye, Cleveland and Cincinnati, right? The third team is going to be Jacksonville. The fourth team is going to be Arizona on week 15. They'll have Kyler Murray, right? So that week that they played the Bengals were off the bye with an extra day's rest, and they had to travel from Minnesota. Short week with travel, not good. So here's what else you're looking at. Week 14 against Seattle, the Seahawks have a mini bye because they play on Thursday, the week 13. And when the 49ers play Washington in week 17, that's off a short week because of the Christmas matchup with Baltimore. So that's another one after 6 days. The 5 games have the 49ers with a rest disadvantage of 26 days. They really be quiet. 26 days. The only real good news is the 49ers have their own version of a mini bye with the Thanksgiving game with Seattle before they head into Philly. That's the only good news that you have. That's it. Is that they're after the Thanksgiving game, you have the mini bye before you get to play Philly. So you got to rack up these games that you have right now. Like you have to rack them up now because there are going to be so many of these weird games. I mean, Arizona played the 49ers down to the last second, right? With Josh, well, not the last second, but they were giving him fits for a little bit, right? And now you got Kyler coming back, right? Like, that's not all things that you want to line up. So again, when you look at the schedule and you're like, oh, Arizona's going to be trash, this, like, now things are starting to line up where it's weird. And again, these aren't excuses. The 49ers still need to win these games because they're better than most of these teams. But man, they've been put at such a disadvantage when it comes to the rest. And when you look deep into it, it's like 4 teams off the bye. How many short weeks you got to go through? How much cross country you got to do? This is a gut check time for this team this season.
Yeah. Big time crucial moment coming up with the Jags. And what are they? The Jags are 6-2 right now.
I believe they're the same, 5-3.
They're 5-3.
Yeah.
And they've been a much improved team under Doug Peterson and that coaching staff. And obviously Trevor Lawrence was coming in as a generational quarterback, and we know he's got generational talent, and he's starting to put it together. Travis Etienne, I mean, they got a lot of weapons. Defensive side, they got playmakers, and it's, to your point, they're traveling across country. I don't care. Like a 10 a.m. start time on the East Coast messes up your body clock, like, because that means they're in the locker room starting to get ready to go out on the field around 7 a.m. West Coast times. That's where their body clock is at. So that means they're waking up probably at 5 or 6 or like 5, who knows, maybe even earlier on their body clock. So that's why those games are always a little bit trickier. It's because it's just like, you don't know who's going to show up with the juice, who's going to have the juice, who's going to be depleted. I can speak to, just traveling to go and, cover the games the way I do, like traveling to LA, driving down there, then traveling to Minnesota. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how some of these, like, getting in and out of the airport, the hotels, all that stuff. Like, it's a fun experience, but it's like, damn, it's kind of tiring. And like then trying to work through the whole thing, like stay on your schedule, your work schedule. It's like, I was like, man, I could see how, even though these guys obviously have it super nice with how they travel, it's still an added layer to it. And it is more strenuous than playing at home and not having to travel. So long story short, it's a big test on the road in Jacksonville. I know the 49er fans are going to show up. There's going to be a lot of red there. They're going to have a lot of support, so maybe get some extra juice from the crowd. But Fred Warner said the Bengals game was a must-win game. What does that make this? You know, like that makes this a must-win game. Like I think for their own mental health, they can't go 0-4. Like they can't lose 4 games in a row.
It's good to see Jim Everett here. This is how you know 49ers are in a bad way right now.
The trolls are out.
Clowns, you clowns aren't winning the Super Bowl. Shout out to him. You gotta laugh, right? Like, I mean, you know what? Give it to him, man. He's here every single week. I gotta give him props, man.
Hey, dedication. Some of the best trolls are the most dedicated ones.
And hate never sleeps. You know how much time and dedication you got to put to be a hater. Like, you think haters don't take days off. Haters don't get bye weeks.
Well, they don't have self-esteem, so like that's where they get their energy.
I like my guy though. I like Jim Everett though.
I'm not speaking specifically to
Jim.
I'm just saying in general. Like that's how they get their energy, by taking it, sucking it from other people.
I think Jim Everett understands, and he plays on the fact that 49ers are a passionate bunch. Like I think he knows, like, it's easy work. Like, he don't got to do nothing. Like, I'll type a few words and I'm about to get like 5 people up in their arms and everything. Like, I respect it, man. And he always shows around, man. So yeah, man, I like that guy.
Hey, some of the trolls out here, they be grinding, man. They be cooking,
work. Man. I respect it. You can't to be a hater. That's a 24/7 job. Like, I hate on.
You gotta have haters notifications on. You got to be commenting on everything.
A hater's mentality is you gotta hate. You gotta hate all the time. Like, there's no days off from hate, man. I respect it. Anybody who's dedicated to their craft, and haters have a craft, I respect it. So.
Hey man, there's a troll culture for a reason. It takes a lot of time and dedication, that's for sure. But any last thoughts, on the 49ers, on the Jags, on anything else. Obviously out of the bye. Hopefully we see this team energized, ready to go, man.
This got to be a win here. I do think the 49ers find a way to get it done at this point. Again, obviously, this is me being optimistic, but I do think you have a week. The Chase Young thing has to show itself. The Jacksonville Jaguars give up a ton of sacks. Trevor can move. That is a little concerning. Trevor can move. But at the same time, this is exactly what the 49ers, it might be what the doctor ordered. Almost like a three-point shooter who hasn't seen the ball go through the hoop and they hit a layup or they hit a free throw, and then you start to get the confidence back. I think that's kind of what you're going to see this week from the defensive line. So I got the 49ers winning this one. But before we go real quick, I know people are like looking for the updated best ball stats. So, we can go through that real quick if you want. Yeah, real fast. Like, because I got to get Averly back to her mom's crib real quick. So yeah, let's do it.
For sure.
So let's see. Drafts, results, live. I know that I snuck back in, but unfortunately, all three of my quarterbacks have either torn their ACL or been benched. So I am done at quarterback.
So you don't have quarterback, so that's like we can't pick up mid-year, right? So you just have no quarterback.
No quarterbacks. None at all.
So you're getting no points from that specific position slot.
I am not. I am currently sitting, and I'm going to share my screen so we can put it up real quick. But yeah, I lost all three. Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins, and Ryan Tannehill got benched. So yeah. I mean, that's what I get, right? That's exactly what I get.
My quarterback room is atrocious.
All right, so let's get to it. I don't know if you can see it. You're going to put it up? All right, you got it? All right, cool. So we got Niner Fan 408. That is Matt McHose. He is at 1,112.88, which is, he's 20 points ahead of me. Josh Allen, Brock Purdy, Kyler Murray's coming back. That's not good for any of us, honestly. Breece Hall, James Cook, Raheem Mostert has been carrying him, 157 points this year. Amon-Ra, DJ Moore, Tank Dell has been incredible, man. Oh my God. You Senior Bowl guys. And then Tyler Higbee at tight end. So that's what his team's looking at. Shout out to Justin. Lamar Jackson, 90.20. Jared Goff, that's a solid 1-2. 1-2 right there.
CMC
gets McCaffrey back, gets Josh Jacobs again. Kyron Williams is on his way back. Christian Watson hasn't really done too much, but Godwin and Evans have been holding it down. Adam Thielen was still his best pick. Darren Waller's out for the year, so he's going to have to rely – well, not out for the year, but out for 4 weeks. He's going to have to rely on Freiermuth and Okonkwo.
Freiermuth's on IR too.
Yep. So there you go. So Okonkwo. Yep. So Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill. I have no more quarterbacks. In third place, Ramondre Stevenson, Madison, Achan. Hopefully he comes back and saves me. But Gus has been carrying me.
Man.
Yeah, but Gus has been carrying me. He's been doing well. He's scoring touchdowns. CD, Garrett Wilson, Keenan, Gabe Davis. I get to get his blow-up games, and Ingram and Dalton Schultz. I don't know if I want to go down it. No, I'm not. You know what? I'm not even going to show yours. So I think that's it. We're done here.
No, show me mine. I want to see how bad it is.
All right. So you're at 903.58.
I'm not last, and you should be embarrassed if you aren't last. I got Stroud though. Let's go.
Justin Fields, right? So look, Justin Fields and Love haven't really, but Stroud's been carrying you right now. Eckler, Derrick Henry, that should be good, honestly, going forward now that they're out of their buys and everything.
Eckler's finally cooking a little bit.
Debo's back. Drake London missed the game. Pittman's been all right. Bateman hasn't really done too much. The receivers have been lacking you a little bit, but Njoku and Musgrave have been okay. So, that is our update for our Best Ball League State of the Franchise, and you can sign up for Underdog Fantasy under the promo code Aponte, APONTE. Double your first deposit up to $500. You can do higher, lower picks on basketball. I'll send some out for Thursday Night Football, and you can make yourself some money, man. I've been going over from Jersey right into New York just so I can place underdog bets.
Dude, as long as I don't come in last place, I'm calling that a W.
That's a win. I see this as an absolute win.
That's the optimistic look that we're gonna take. As long as I don't come in last, because that team I drafted in real time, I was like, yeah, this is the last place team.
And Cynthia wants to see hers, and I'll actually do that for Cynthia. Cynthia's actually in 6th. So she's got
right there in the middle.
Yeah, she's got Geno, Russell Wilson, and Matt Stafford, Pollard, and Jonathan Taylor, who's come back and really kicked up. So I think you're going to see an uptick there. She's got AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. AJ Brown has been probably, aside from Tyreek Hill, probably the most dominant receiver in the league right now. So that's a good call. And TJ Hawkinson. So Cynthia, you're right in the mix of things. Again, I can't score points. It's the top 11 players on your team every week that go up into your, and it could not be a quarterback. It could be a quarterback. But your top 11 that go up. So yeah, you're right in the mix of things, Cynthia. AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. How do we let that happen?
I need Eckler to carry me and score some touchdowns, get me up there. Hopefully,
Yep.
CJ Stroud continues
He's hooping,
his
man.
rise.
He's so good.
Remember when everyone called him a bust for a preseason game?
Or remember when everyone called him a bust because of a cognitive test? Turns out that you actually play football on the field and not on some test.
The overreactions in the NFL are wild. That goes for the 49ers fan base as well. And again, maybe that's why you tune in for State of the Franchise, because we try to provide as much information and try to provide as much clarity and balance as much as possible. Hopefully we provided that for you. But if you need more, I know Jason Aponte's out here cooking on Niners the Nation. You got any articles coming out the rest of the week? Anything you're working on?
Yeah, so the Purdy article that will have all the stats. I don't know if it came out today, but it might be out tomorrow. So you want to check out Niners Nation for that. But yeah, all week, you catch me on there, and catch me on Twitter, Jason Aponte 2103. So yeah, and Jason, thoughts on the first seed? I wrote an article saying that it's very possible, but the Philadelphia Eagles need to slip just a little bit. In terms of
right?
Yeah, well, Buffalo, Kansas City, Seattle, Dallas, right? Like those are games in a row. Somebody's got to be able to knock them off. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like the 49ers have it right in front of them, but you know what's a little bit scary and we haven't talked about it? The Detroit Lions have an absolute cakewalk of a schedule. Yes, it's not good. I can go through it. I think they have like Minnesota twice. They've got Green Bay. Their division is just bad. So Detroit might be the team that's kind of in our way more than anything. Right. So let me see real quick. So they've got the Chargers on Sunday so the 12th. Yeah, so Sunday. The Bears, the Packers, the Saints. That's not an easy game. The Bears, the Broncos, the Vikings, Dallas. That's not an easy game. And then the Vikings again. So the Lions have an actual kind of easy path on their way to securing, or getting in the way of the 49ers. But I do think Philly finds a way. I gotta think Buffalo and Kansas City give them problems because they're from the AFC. But I looked at the Lions schedule and that kind of scared me more than anything. I was like, oh no, they really have a lot of really good games going forward, and they've been so good. I think everybody's looking at their offense, but their defense has been great. Mm-hmm. Their defense has been great. Not even just up front. You can't really run the ball on them. Man, damn it. Don Burr, wherever you at, man. I love that for you, but I hate that for us.
Chat legend.
Yep.
Well, it's nut up or shut up time right about now. 49ers got to, I'm hoping, again, taking an optimistic angle, that kind of getting punched in the face a little bit, kind of having the whole world kind of crash down on you 3 weeks in a row, heading into a bye. Maybe there's a lot of time for reflection, a lot of time for looking in the mirror. Who are we? What do we need to really do? And what do we really need to fix? And kind of get your mind back on track, because we were so literally high off that Dallas game, because like you said, how often have the 49ers started out that hot? Never. Like really, we just haven't. Outside of 2019, but even in 2019, they were still grinding through those wins.
Right. They weren't blowing people out the way that the Niners
exactly. They weren't scoring 30 points a game. We're like, oh, this offense is a little sus, but the defense is holding it down, and we're doing just enough to get through these games, and it just worked out that way. But maybe this is enough to kind of get everyone back on track, refocus, recalibrate, and re-scheme a little bit and try to look in the mirror.
One more thing, too, is off of the mini buy, and Cash Money pointed this out, off the mini buy, the 49ers will have a chance to play the Philadelphia Eagles. So if they need to make up a loss, it's there.
Yeah.
It's there. You still get to play Philly. So if you want to make up that loss, you got to go in there and punch them in the mouth.
Yeah, I mean, we got a tough stretch. Jags, Tampa, Seattle, Philly, Seattle. Who else is that?
Baltimore, Christmas.
Cardinals, Baltimore, Washington, Rams. So that bird gauntlet is it's going to be an interesting one. But it starts with the Kitty Cats, the Jags. And so we'll see what the 49ers do. I think they should win, but I
Yes.
also do think it will be a bit of a dogfight. So
Oh, this
it'll
is
be
going to be tough.
interesting to see. Typically, dogs come out on top when they're fighting cats, so hopefully that prevails as well. But you guys already know what to do. Make sure you're following Jason Aponte on his channel. You guys already know where to find me. And stay of the franchise. We will be back next week, hopefully talking about a Niners W and a skirt off the sky is falling. And 49ers are back on track, looking like the team that we thought they were. It's been fun. Jason, any parting words for the group?
Nah, man, shout out to you guys. I know you've been asking where we've been at, but sickness has kind of run through my house. I think Brad was feeling not so good also too. Yeah, but we're back though.
Yeah, I feel phenomenal after 4 days with no internet or cell service.
I love that for
Highly
you.
underrated.
Love that for you.
Like, can you think of a time where you didn't have internet or cell service, like,
I
in
have.
recent years?
Yeah, no, I put my phone on do not disturb and I just throw it to the side. Like I just don't look at it.
Good for
And
you.
yeah, like this entire week, I come back and I look at like my name mentioned a bunch of times on Twitter and like arguments and stuff, and I'm just like, man, you guys have been going at it this entire bye week. Like, please, man, like let's just like do other stuff.
I mean, it was beautiful because like I couldn't even check if I wanted to. So it was just like I don't have to look at my phone. I only brought my phone to take pictures and stuff with the kiddos and
And
like all that stuff. And
as of right now, if things work, I'll be at that Philly game. I gotta go this time.
oh, you're gonna go?
Yeah, it's too close for
Oh,
me.
okay.
It's a
Yeah, I
45-minute
feel it.
drive. Yeah,
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 no,
or like a
for
90-minute
sure.
drive. It's fine. I can make it happen.
Absolutely. So big second half of the season, and it starts off with a bang against the Jags. This Sunday, 10 a.m. start time, Pacific Standard Time. Big game, lots of implications on the line. Shout out to everyone for tapping in. Appreciate all you guys. Whether you love Brock Purdy, whether you hate Brock Purdy, whether you love us, whether you hate us. Shout out to you guys as always
Thanks for
for
watching.
tapping in. Thanks for watching. State of the franchise. We're out of here. Peace. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now.